I grew up as a kid on Eastern Long Island. I was an AFL fan. Back in the day when the American Football League started, and I was really young, I used to watch the Chargers because their games were always the late game on the AFL TV network on ABC. And I'd see palm trees and sunshine. I'd see old Balboa Stadium, and I looked out my window in Long Island and there was 6 inches of snow and it was 21 degrees. And so I'm watching this. I never thought I'd become the voice of the Chargers. Lucky me. But that guy, that was the first of the group of great quarterbacks that have worn the lightning bolt. Hadl was the first one with Sid Gilman, then obviously Dan Fouts and Eric Coryell, Philip Rivers and Marty Schottenheimer. But he was part of a group of what I call gunslingers. This might be a little bit before your time. The old AFL had legendary throwers. George Blanda came from the NFL, old Chicago Bear. He played for the Houston Oilers, and he was dynamic throwing the football all over the parking lot. You had the Mad Bomber, Darryl LaMonica. He came from Buffalo. He was with the Raiders. I mean, he threw something like 78 touchdowns in his first 3 years in the AFL. Frankie Tripucka, Denver Broncos. He was the thing that made their franchise go. He came from the Canadian Football League. So there was just a collective group of quarterbacks every Sunday that would throw for 420 yards or the occasional 500-yard game. And John Hadl was part of that collective group. He led them. We've only had one championship with a football team here, 1963 Chargers AFL champions. He led them to the finals 2 other times. He's in the Chargers Hall of Fame, had a really good career here, then went to L.A., finished his career with the Rams, and became a head coach at his alma mater, Kansas University. What a gentleman. He passed away at age 82. But I'll tell you what, everybody talks about the AFL Chargers, and rightfully so, the Hall of Famer Lance Allworth, and rightfully so, the running back Paul Lowe, and rightfully so, the tight end Dave Kachurik. You had to have somebody to get the ball to him, and it was that guy. He was a really, really good quarterback in a very different era in the AFL. Any memories of the American Football League? Does that predate you?
Well, it does a bit. I mean, I was just starting to follow football when I was in the early 70s when I was a youngster. But I remember the Raiders had LaMonica then. This is before Stabler. And George Blanda was the kicker.
Yeah.
And then I remember they said that, Blanda was the backup quarterback, and he was this old guy. He was like in his late 40s. And I was like, how in the heck is this guy a backup quarterback? But he had that history. It's interesting too with John Hadl. Every story I've heard about him, a first-class guy. But you go and look at the photos, those old school AFL photos from the 60s, and the quarterback has just the single bar across the helmet. It's almost one step removed from the leather helmets, from back in the day. So a passing of a great Charger quarterback that brought probably the only major sports championship to San Diego in 1963. We're losing some of the greats.
Yeah, well, he was paired with Sid Gilman, who was a mad scientist. And you ask people about Sid Gilman and what he brought to football. Sid Gilman preceded Don Coryell, and they both changed the game. But he was a nice gentleman.